Hello, and welcome to the Judo Way of Life podcast. Today, I'll be joined by Mike Liptrot. Hello, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, David. How are we doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, great. Yeah, lovely here on the Isle of Man. Quite a nice day. On my holidays, a little bit. Couple of days off, so things going really well.
So, we were saying before we started recording that you've been pretty busy recently, and you just come back from the Tokyo Olympics. How was that?
Yeah, great. Very strange games. Obviously, the other games I was involved in was London. So that was a different kind of games to the normal things because it was a home games. But I thought the Japanese people were sensational, the way they put the event on. And very different. You know, no crowds, able to watch all the judo because, number one, I'm a judo fan. And actually being able to watch there at the Budokan Hall was sensational. I only missed one session when Kiki, the young athlete from Kiribati I was working with, had to weigh in that night. So I think it was the 81 kilo final block I missed. But yeah, some terrific judo. Very interesting kind of stuff. Good times, good couple of weeks in Tokyo. Yeah, it was great.
So, how did it come about that you were going to coach the athletes that you did at the games?
I've worked since Beijing since 2008 when it was announced that we would get the games. No, that's a lie, isn't it? I think 2004 we knew that we were going to get the Olympic Games in London, and then 2008 is when things really started to kick off. So our region in the Northwest, the Sports Council in the Northwest, created a training camps booklet, and we just built the dojo in 2006, or the new dojo in 2006. And we went in the training guide, and then it just ran on from there, really, just being involved with our own region. And then we became host to Oceania before the games for training camps. And it was quite innovative what they did because they actually paid and gave a grant for training camps in the UK. So lots of the small nations, I think it was £25,000, I think, that they gave to each nation to come and train in the UK. And we ended up, as you know, because you were an athlete there, with 9 different nations preparing for the Olympic Games. We had Nehru boxers, we had all the islands, Solomon, right the way through to Fiji. We had Cecilia Nasinga, your mate that we travelled with quite a bit, David. You were winning tournaments at the English Open and Scottish Open, and she was following you and doing the same. And we had some good times on the build up to the games, you know, regional matches and stuff. And then, you know, working with Joseki Naru at the games, helping him. He was a Fijian that qualified, travelling around the tournaments and doing stuff like that. And that's pretty much continued. We've worked a little bit harder on the build up to Tokyo because Joseki Naru has become the Oceania technical director of Oceanian Judo, and helping him, and he's set up a training centre in Japan at Raisaku University, his university where he works. So athletes have the opportunity to come from the islands and come and do high school and then move on to university and spend time in Japan, which I think is wonderful because they actually get the chance to go where the judo population is, you know, where they can train together in big lumps. They get a great education on the end of it, and really they get set up for life in lots of ways, you know. So it's a wonderful programme, and something that we're really involved in here at Kendal. We're going to take some of our Dai students across to Japan to train for a few weeks, and they're going to bring a Japanese team to us. So it's building friendships, building relationships, and that kind of thing. And then obviously there's a big push in Oceania to develop women's sport. And, you know, we had 48% of all the athletes, 52, I think, male and female this time at the Games. And that's terrific. We did fill the quota for women from Oceania, but unfortunately some of the athletes weren't able to travel because of COVID, and it it caused a few problems, of course. It's done for everybody in the world, I think. But yeah, so that's why I'm working with Oceania, just helping out and being a sounding board on the end of the phone and doing little Zoom sessions with athletes and being a personal coach to some and helping some over the top and Joe with the systems and how to set up training camps in Japan and stuff like that. That, you know, we had experience doing in London, and we passed all that kind of info on to him to be able to do it. So that's where we are with it, really.
And was that the first time you sat mat side and coached at the Olympics? I remember in 2012, I don't think that was the case. What was
2012? I went as an advisor, really. You've got to be allied to a country, so I was there with Solomon Islands, but and Tony Lomo from Solomon Islands. But my job was just to help the coaches, really, and just to bounce around in the background, you know, behind the scenes, making sure they didn't make any mistakes, making sure that everybody made the way in, and the whole process is, because some of the coaches aren't always that experienced at world level, and that's one of the issues, really, is that the Olympic Games is very different to a World Championships or a Continental Championships and things. And if you're not that experienced, it can be quite a daunting place. And then obviously on the build-up to the Games, crazily, the village isn't a great place to be to prepare for a major championships. It's quite difficult to get to training. In Tokyo, we trained at the Kodokan, but it took 4 hours to go and do an hour session. By the time you jumped on the bus and gone down and got yourself there and the rest of it. Whereas if you're on a pre-Olympic training camp and you're actually in the dojo in Kendal, you know, the accommodation's there on site and everything, you can rock out of bed and in 15 minutes you can be taped up and on the mat and ready to go, you know. And so that means you can do more. You can do when you want. You know, you're not booking sessions. It can evolve. It can be holistic. It can be everything you want. It can be about the athlete, and rather than the system. So the athlete and the coach can prepare properly for games. If you're in a village, it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. So you get the same food for 14 days, 3 meals a day, you know, 24/7. You pretty much live on a building site. So obviously all the apartments are great, but you can see that, you know, being involved in the building trade before, as I was when I was an electrician in a past life, is that they're all plasterboarded, they're all screw fixed, everything else, all the electrics is on the surface, ready to rip out when we've all finished. You know, the toilet and things is just a module thing dropped in the middle of it. And them apartments were going to go for $2.5 million, you know, seaside apartments on Tokyo Bay, overlooking the things when we'd finished with them. So it's like living on a big fancy building site with lots of other athletes knocking about, that some have finished competing, some haven't, some are preparing, all different sports. So it can become a very difficult place to prepare, really.
And how do you feel as though Kiki did in her competition? I know she fought the Aussie girl first fight.
Yeah. Cochran, yeah. And what we did a little bit, it's very strange. So when you try to coach on Zoom, David, I know you've done a lot of this, and I have, and lots of judo coaches have throughout the last year or so. When you're teaching on Zoom, it's very difficult to get a fine little training point over to be able to do things. And Kiki had come from Kiribati for a month's training in Japan as part of the program. We had 3 girls come. Joe had 3 girls come to the centre, and what happened was she continued there and eventually got locked down in Japan when COVID hit and Kiribati closed. That meant that she was able to train more. Obviously, she was able to progress on more. She then had to go out to qualify once she'd been there a year or so. So she got, if you watch Uchikomi and technical stuff, is great. You know, she was in a past life, she was a wrestler, like a Kiribati wrestler as well, not just freestyle, but the other things. And then she'd done a little bit of judo. So we'd looked at the talent, looked at the athlete, She's a little bit older than most of the athletes that were wanting to interact onto the program, but heart and soul into everything she does. She got quite a story, quite a backstory. She then went out to qualify in Kazan because she had to do an IJF event before she could qualify a place. And that was, we had lots of conversations about that because I was worried if she caught COVID in between traveling and she'd gone to Kazan, she wouldn't be able to move on. She didn't have a state. She wouldn't be able to get back into Japan. She would be stateless and in a real mess. She made that decision herself and she wanted to do it. So she went on, she competed in Kazan. She then went and did 2 weeks in Moscow, which frightened her a little bit because they weren't so COVID secure as what we are in the Western world and things. And, you know, in Japan to what she was used to. And then she went to Budapest and for the World Championships, met Joe again at the World Championships. And she was competed there, amassed participation points for both events so she could compete in the games. And she had to wait there until the qualification things came through and she could return to Japan as an athlete, you know, with a accreditation and was accredited athlete to the Olympic Games. She couldn't go in a gym because she hadn't been double vaccinated at that time. She couldn't go in a dojo because she'd done that. So we had to be really innovative with putting books in a suitcase and using it like a kettlebell in a carry-on suitcase. Uchikomi bands, you know, all the normal kind of stuff, everything, and just keeping her motivated. And then you see athletes that get a constant opportunity to train along the way. The Australian team were traveling in Europe and, you know, with Daniel Kelly and Alex and lots of the other coaches. And they eventually came to Budapest to do training camp and they were unable to help her and to do a little training camp before she came to the games. And then we had a week or so in the Kodokan and other things. And we developed this little Uchigari process. And you know how difficult it is, Dave, to do something, to go through a setup of what you want to achieve, your little game plan, and then go out and actually put it in place. Well, she struggled with Coughlin, and she was big friends with, you know, they used to train together, the 70-kilo players together. She struggled with her on the randori, and we couldn't go out and just grip up because that wouldn't have done it. So she had this old Chigari standing left and dropping her arm through and stuff. And she went out and spent a minute and a half trying to put that in place. So on the Olympic stage, on the Olympic Games, I thought she was superb. You know, I couldn't have asked more for her from a young, inexperienced athlete. And I thought she was a bit of a superstar, actually. But when we're so medal orientated and we only look as a medal as success, I think that's one of the issues, really. You know, sometimes actually getting to the games and the story of doing that is more than a medal, you know.
Was she on her own the whole time she was traveling sort of through Russia and the rest of Europe?
Joe went with her to Kazan, but then they had to return, you know, and to Vita. And then they met her again. We met her again at the World Championships. She had to go out again, but she couldn't return because she had the visa for Japan. You see,
yeah.
She had to go out, and you know, you've got to think that this is I don't want disrespectful, but an island girl who'd not seen much of anything. You know, Japan was a big deal to her, and then to go from Japan to Russia again, which is another massive experience, and then to Hungary again. And, you know, she was helped immensely by the IJF, by the university, by Joe and Oceania Judo and everybody to help her try and qualify. And there's, you know, if you want the best judoka in the world, you go to the World Championships. That's where the best judoka is. That's where the toughest tournament is. That's the things of it. The Olympic Games is about participation right across the board. and people actually striving to be Olympians, you know. So, you know, it's to actually get to the games and do that. Everybody's got a story to do that, you know. I'd kill to do that, David, and I know you would as well. I'd swap it tomorrow to try and be an Olympian, you know. We've got some very fortunate people that have been able to be Olympians, but they've worked really hard to do that.
Yeah, it's an incredible journey. So I remember obviously back in 2012 when we had all the players come and stay with us in Kendal, and we'd all sit down to have dinner together, and everyone would be swapping stories, you know, and everyone, and like some of the players, you know, I didn't have that much experience in judo, and I think, say for Michael, Danny, and myself, you know, we were all a lot more time on the mat, but you know, just listening to the guys and girls, and just how, you know, where they'd come from to get to that point of being at the Olympics, and you just couldn't help but be in sort of admiration of them.
Yeah, we're all different, partly different nations. Every country has a different demographic as far as socially and judo wise, really, and that's why we have a different style and we have a different outlook generally. You know, each athlete, and you know, some athletes in GB are very fortunate. They have an England program or a home nations program they can get involved in, a regional program, everything sorted. Whereas some of the nations just have a judo club. You know, and they don't have all that infrastructure. They don't have really experienced coaches. They have to come out of the country to actually do that, you know, and participate. And we can do that with judo because you can just travel with a kit and there's opportunities. And that's what I think is so great about Japan, is that these athletes and judo is because these athletes can actually travel, do things, and they don't have any money. They have no resources. They have nothing to be able to do it, and they can get a really good education. You know, and a life-changing education that can help them future in life, and hopefully then they can pass it on to them. But it's a long-term thing. You know, we're talking about generational changes. We're not talking about things that can happen in a 4-year cycle. You know. And that's one of the problems, but that's why I'm really excited to be involved, because we're attempting to change cultures, which is nearly impossible. We know that, but we can change individuals within that culture that can then go back and help people, you know, and I think that's really important.
Is Kiki looking to compete at the 2024 Olympics? And will you be continuing your partnership?
The idea at the moment is she's gone back to continue. She's stopping in Japan because Kiribati is closed. She'll stay in Japan and continue to train. We're looking for funding. Her National Olympic Committee is very, very supportive of their athletes, and they're doing everything they possibly can to help her along the way. We're talking about Commonwealth Games in Birmingham next year, 2022. And then we're looking to go forward, because any young athlete that we would take onto the program from Kiribati would probably be too young for Paris. You know, we've only a 3-year cycle now, and we're talking about high school kind of ages, or, you know, high school possibly for university. And they've got to have, you know, actually train and along the process. So Kiki's a work in process, but, you know, we work with lots of different islands. It's not just about Kiribati and one individual. I would have helped with any, you know, I've Tavita taking him to Paris tournament and Dusseldorf and training camps, helped him at the games with a team of coaches, a group of us together. I wasn't sitting at mat side with him, but, you know, we had a little game plan that we all talked together, and a really good atmosphere that they have at the university. And, you know, at the university in Japan with the coaches, is originally it was Sekijuku, which is Okano's dojo, that lots of Western people went to, and lots of Western athletes. And I went and trained there in the 80s with Tony. And Okano's coach and mentor was Watanabe. And, you know, the coaches at the university have all experience of them coaches as their mentors, and that's a lineage that we all have. and we matched Schuster and Watanabe and Okano and Macconnell standing on the other side of it, and lots of the other, coaches and people in GB that have had influences along the way. That's how we all fit into the lineage, and it's really nice to see it progressing on and mixing together going forward. So that's good.
Yeah, so just on the back, you're talking there about the lineage. So I suppose you mentioned Tony Macconnell as well there. So my understanding is you took over as the coach of Kendal from Tony. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I was coaching at the club. I was an athlete, up to 1984, and we moved into the centre, the big training centre. So we had a full-time group training for 3 or 4 years at Tony's house, really, and in the little dojo up Blue Coat Yard. And we had visiting teams and we had lots of different things. And then that evolved into the training centre, which ran there for 5 or 6 years. And because the athletes had, zero money and the other things, it was really tough financially for them because there was no lottery funding. We had lots of players on the teams, lots of Olympians, lots of Olympic medals. Everybody would come to the centre. But it wasn't supported financially from the government and other things. It was supported by sponsors and, Colin Draycott and Brian Cox and great people that really helped. But it was very, very difficult to keep it going. And that stopped, and we sold off levels of that. And I was a club coach. And then we took the club on a little bit more and developed the club, whereas Tony actually developed a full-time training centre. And I was, I think, the only Kendal boy that was involved in the full-time centre, in that way, actually trained as an athlete. So I took the club on, and it evolved, really. And I ended up doing the school's judo program. I had 2,500 kids each year do judo with us on the school's program that I ran for 10 years. Then we moved into a new centre eventually because we got some funding from local government and the money's from where. And then the centre has evolved. So it's just a big shed that has lots and lots of potential. And we continue to use that potential. We've got accommodation for 70 people on site. And things just evolve, and we do fun, innovative kind of things within the centre to promote judo. And really fun stuff. It's great.
And on the back of it, you say the fun stuff. I remember my first experience with you as a coach was back when I was about 12. I think it's like maybe early 2000, maybe 2001, 2002. And you invited me to one of the Northwest training camps up at Kendal. And I remember coming along and talk about the judo, the older judo club. And I remember walking up the stairs and so the nerves kicking in, so the fear of the unknown, didn't really know what to expect. And we did obviously a lot of judo, a lot of randori, a lot of outdoor activities. Like, how important do you think those training camps were for the development of for kids?
Well, I think for the athlete, they are very, very important. And we take that kind of thing, when you're building an athlete, you need lots of different things, don't you? And you need a real open mindset and an ability to take on anything that's thrown at you, lots of different scenarios, and a mental toughness and a resilience, all these things we talk about now within mental health and sport and within the school structures and lots of things. And judo can do lots of that kind of stuff. Actually being on the mat and doing randori and practicing and training together. So that, it says it, what's on the tin is what you get. So it's a training camp. So these aren't technical camps. They're not where you spend time with an individual athlete and do a technical session, like we would do on a Thursday afternoon, David. Remember when we did all the, little technical things about your judo? This is where you're going to do long randori sessions. You're going to get used to that kind of thing within our sport because that's how we build a resilience, a hardness and things. And then the thing that was a little bit different with Tony is that he took the outward bound kind of stuff and lots of the things from the Lake District and put that into a program that evolved in training weekends. Every weekend, the region would, when I was an athlete, lots of the young athletes would come to Kendal to do a training weekend every month. And we'd do a couple of outdoor sessions. We'd run on the fells and the other things. So, you know, if I was training in Sydney, Australia, where you are, David, maybe first thing in the morning, we'd run along on the beach. You know what I mean? I don't know. Were you in Barcelona, Dave, when we went down to Cadet Fells a couple of times?
Not on the trips. I think you're talking about. I think I was a little bit too young when you did those.
You know, yeah. But I think some of the trips, obviously, you know, we're camping. We're going down to Murcia to European Youth Olympics. We camped in Cadet Fells because that's an area I knew through the training camps myself, the other things. And the boys, we ran on the beach. And you run and do your program on the beach because that's what's there to you. So, you know, if there's cold water and lakes and the fells, you're going to use them resources to do what you're going to do. It's a little bit different now because we've got to have outdoor leaders and other people and the other stuff. So it's tempered down a little bit, but we can evolve it all. You know, the big Barney Rubbles, the fell running, the other stuff. You know, it's still there, you know, and we do lots of that. And I think that's really important for the young athletes. You know, of course, we have winter camp, but the fells and everything are there 24/7, 365 days a year. We use them as a training resource in Kendal to do stuff. So when people come to training camps and we have the right numbers and we're able to do it, and, you know, if you've got a camp with 100 odd people, sometimes it's really difficult to do outdoor edge stuff. But if you had small groups, you know, 15, 20 people and the right amount of leaders, it's great. You know, it's wonderful. And it builds a resilience. It builds a camaraderie. Like you said before, David, about sitting and eating together. You know, just, you know, I'm massive in that, you know, just sit down, eat together, break bread, get involved in the stories, you know, sleeping in a bunkhouse with 10 people in your bedroom that you've maybe never met before, from right across judo, you know, mixing and doing them things, builds young athletes and builds young people. And I think it's really important that we continue to do them kind of things, you know, and they're open. You know, some of the things, the British government implemented things that have closed lots of the outward bound centres, you know, throughout the Lake District, you know, to the normal everyday punter. I think that's just a travesty. I think it's awful that not everybody has the opportunity to do that. And sometimes it's money related, you know what I mean? That they have to pay to actually do that. Whereas we need more people doing it. We need more people, you know, it needs to change more lives really for people. You know? Anyway, that's my redder than dead kind of scenario, David, you know, being a Labour man along the way. I think it's really important that we have sport for everybody to be able to participate and do the things. And it's a bit of a conundrum for me. You know, it's a bit of an issue because, you know, we need money to pay coaches to be able to do the right kind of thing, to deliver the right kind of programs. And yeah, I get that. I'm involved in that business. But at the same time, it's got to be accessible for people, you know. And then that's one of the great things about our sport. It's accessible to everybody, you know.
I think for me, I mean, I don't know if you'll remember this, but my first competition abroad was Lugi. I think I was 12. So you just invited me to the Northwest area. I'd done the squad sessions, the 2 camps leading into the nationals. I did my first nationals, and then following that, you invited me to Lugi. And one of the things that really stuck, well, apart from, like you say, the sleeping on the mat, you know, there's a group of us, we were in sleeping bags in a huge sports hall with, you know, hundreds of other kids from all around Europe. And I can't remember what I did, but I'd done something wrong. I remember my punishment. I had to get pack of biscuits for both you and Billy Cusack, and he had to be there every morning on time with his pack of biscuits, and that was my my penance.
That would be Billy. That would be Billy that did that, because Billy does like a chocolate biscuit. Now it's probably absolutely nothing to do with me, David. I was just very involved, but I can imagine that would be Billy Cusack that would do things like that.
But he told me, he told me that responsibility, and I was 12, right? And it was the first time I sort of been away from my parents and all that, and I was scared, and well, not scared, but obviously there's nerves, and there's this sort of like all this new world and being in Sweden and stuff, and this judo, and but he just told me that like that level of responsibility at that young age, and it was something that was always built upon every time, and you looked after us, but we were allowed to sort of be like young adults, and we had that opportunity to sort of like grow and learn these skills, of like being responsible, make sure we were on time, make sure everything was tidy and clean, and we remembered everything, and it's something that's definitely like I didn't realize it at the time as a kid growing up, but as an adult, it's something that's been invaluable to me, and that a lot of that stuff also came from like the outdoor training we did as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that travel's really important, isn't it? And it opens the mindset up, and you see different things as you travel, and we move around the world, and we don't become insular, and we see different things. So going to London, as I say, and again, David, it's a bit of a con really, because it's me working, but at the end of it, I'm going to my friends. I have massive friendships, people I think of nearly as family in Sweden and stuff, and the same all over the world, because they've helped me on the constantly helped me out by creating camps and things I can bring athletes to. And sometimes when I was a young athlete and got myself in little bits of bother, as you do as a young man, just helping you out along the way and pointing you in the right direction. And all these people have done this along the way, and that's a bit of the sport that is really, really big for me. And maybe the reason I do things in Oceania, I don't really care where the athlete comes from. I'm not, of course I'm British. Of course I was screaming for the British team at the Olympic Games. Of course I was shouting for Oceania. Of course I was shouting for Nathan Katz, because Nathan's dad, Rob, trained with us in Kendal, in the 80s, and it's wonderful to see his son compete at the games, and, and I know Daniel Kelly spent a lot of time with Neil in Coventry. So we have all these friendships and things along the way, and we create friendships, and you buddy up to them people, and then it becomes about the people rather than the nation or the other stuff. And they all have different cultures, they're all in lots of different ways, and that just helps us grow. And look at you just disappearing off to Australia, ending up working and coaching and doing what you're doing in Australia. Michael Hawley's in Canada for the athletes. Danny's gone to Craven, which is Yorkshire. It's nearly as far, David, with his passport in Yorkshire coaching. And, Sophie's the British coach. So the actual evolution of that and things moving on and traveling and being involved in the training camps, judo is just a vehicle for us to do that in a way. You know what I mean? And it's a vehicle for our personalities to actually turn out and to do stuff. And that's what I love about sport, that we're all able to do that. One of the things that disappoints me at the moment in the UK, we're not going to be able to travel for the next year, I don't believe, with young athletes, just because of the travel restrictions that are on children that haven't been vaccinated, at the moment, So I can't see the young athletes actually at cadet level, maybe at junior and above they might be able to do, but cadet level, I don't think they'll be able to travel into Europe, which will be awful, because we'll have maybe 2 or 3 years where athletes have missed out on that process. So it's a generation of cadets will have missed that. So I think that's more important than the medals, really. Them experiencing things and the pressures of competing with the national team rather than, you can go away with your club and go and do an event because you feel really comfortable there. Then you go away with the region, like we do with the Northwest region. And again, there's another pressure because you've got people from other clubs and the levels go up and the level of tournament goes up. And then you go to maybe some of the same events with the national team. And then into the European circuit and stuff. And each time the pressure gets more and more and more and stretches you more and more and more as you evolve throughout it. they're some of the things that build people, being able to deal with that pressure and being able to compete and switch it on at the right times and switch it off. And then we can take, all the things that we learn along that way into our everyday life. When we're under pressure, we can deal with it. We can deal with the pressures that come and push them to one side and get on with what we've got to do.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about sort of grassroots judo coaching, especially like the kids, younger players, because you mentioned earlier about the sort of coaching apprenticeship you go through. You're coaching at the club level, and for myself, my first experience coaching on a consistent level was coaching at Kendal, and with you being sort of a mentor at that time, and so I learned a lot from you in that respect. And what do you think are the most important things when coaching kids? So where I'm coming from with this is because I know the school of thought is some coaches aimed more towards playing games, more that fun environment. Other coaches are a little bit more sort of stricter on the technique or the randori. Where do you think?
I think the most important thing to do is to do age appropriate stuff. So that evolves to the kids' development. So we see lots of people that coach around their circumstances. Sometimes if you have a parent that's if you have a coach that say not full time, he has a business and he's me before I actually went into coaching full time, as an electrician, and sometimes I wouldn't be able to make certain events or certain trainings because of work, so that would limit the amount of time that I had with the athlete. Sometimes it would limit the events we could go to because of that. And then when I was a full-time coach, I was able to give a little bit more time to the events and stuff, and also to the volume of training that we could offer at the club. We made it really age appropriate for the things. So the kind of things we do, we had a thing called Kai Tigers Sports Club. We call it Tigers Judo now, David. We put a judo kit on them now. But all these things have evolved, and the way that I coach all the time has evolved as I've got older and changed. So at one time, when I get the young adolescents from 12, 13, 14, is I would train a lot with the athletes and do randori with them. And then I could role play some of the scenarios that I wanted to do with the kids, and would do that with some of the seniors, of course, when I was able to do. Now at 58, I still do a little bit of randori, with somebody who's smaller than me that I can handle, Dave, and doesn't give me such a hard time and stuff. But, the way that I coach has evolved to my age. I think it's really important that you evolve and grow as a coach. I don't teach the same things now as I taught in 2012. The same principles are there, of course, the same technique and the same core principles are there, but the way that it goes, because as a full-time coach, how boring would that be if I didn't evolve and move it on, and continue to move it on? The sport changes, the rules change, the rule set changes. If we're teaching the sport, then that changes. If we're teaching, they say the martial art, I'm not big into martial art, but if they're changing, the physicality of what we do, we're at the dojo at the moment, we've been doing lots of things with GB wrestling, and we've been doing lots of things with Welsh wrestling, and we've got judo players that are Commonwealth medalists, Kane Charrick and Curtis Dodge for Wales, that Alan Jones has turned into wrestlers now in that terms of it, because the skill sets are very similar, So we have lots of people that change sports and cross across, and I think the wrestling fits judo actually better than BJJ, because I think the BJJ stuff, they've evolved a sport that's not judo. It's like the rule set is virtually the opposite of what you want to achieve in judo. And I think whereas wrestling is very, very similar, and you see lots of the evolution of wrestling technique within judo and judo technique within wrestling, you know, gi and no gi kind of stuff, you know, the way that it evolves. And then Greco-Roman, you know, you can't touch your legs at the end of it, you know, it's very much like Tachuaza, you know, in some cases. So I think it's really important that the coach evolves along the way and that the stuff is age appropriate. I struggle when people come to do judo, they usually stay, and they stay for quite a while involved in the sport. And we struggle to market at the moment. And I think it's marketing the sport where we struggle, you know, and where the national governing bodies can help us. If you can get them in the door. I was speaking to a young coach this weekend, and he said to me, he said, I tell them it's a BJJ class this one evening, and I do one class a week, but really it's judo newaza we do. And once you get them in the door, they absolutely love it. And he does judo wrestling and judo newaza, and he has a couple of other people that run technical BJJ class during the week, and it all fits together. Once he's got people in the door and done the marketing, then people tend to stay if they like. Then it depends how good the environment is and how good the coach is, you know, as to stuff. So I've had people come to me and say, I've done judo for such a while, you know, for a year or two, and I got a little bit bored with it. Well, usually it's because they haven't had a goal set. They've just turned up to train. You know, they don't have a goal set for them as an event or a grading. We use the belt system, or there's nothing for them to a goal set along the way, which keeps them encouraging, you know. Competing, I think we should be able to compete at all levels of judo, you know. You know, I know lots of us use randori to compete in, and that can be good and it can be bad, can't it? You know, if you only do one kind of randori, you're not going to develop skill sets and you're not going to develop the sport. So it's knowing the difference between all them and making it age appropriate, what you want to try and do with it, you know.
And you mentioned there about how it's important to set goals and for a coach to evolve. What direction are you heading in now? Your stage of coaching?
At the moment, I'm really, really up for the fight. So at the moment, I haven't been able to do quite as much as what I've wanted to do over the past few years because of COVID. And, you know, we've got lots of people chomping at the bit to start in judo in September. September the 6th, we start back at the dojo with normal classes. We've had training camps throughout the summer. We have some great programs moving forward. And I want to be able to set a system up where the club continues along them avenues and keeps pushing on. I have some goals, and them goals are to set up things like we've done with Raizaku University in Japan, a little memorandum of understanding where we go and train there, they come and train here. And hopefully that will just continue, David. So like you went to Luga camp, maybe some of the athletes on the DICE program, the educational program we run, will be able to go to Japan every year, you know, or every other year. And that would be great because that would continue on the same with another coach. There'd be opportunities to do that. We have a great building at the dojo. You know, it's a wonderful area with you know, with the 2012 Olympic mat on a lovely sprung floor and 350 square meters of Olympic mat area. And then we stretch an Olympic wrestling cover over the top of it from 2012, or two of them. So, you know, we have a great facility to do training camps and to do sessions and continue to produce the same athletes. You know, I've identified quite a few athletes during lockdown that we've been working with, doing little individual sessions and things online and setting up their strength and conditioning and the next group. We have a problem in the UK is that when the athletes get to 18 and they go away generally to university and going away to uni, we don't have so many places where they can continue the judo and do university. and that's a massive hole. You know, we've got Bath University, we've got Walsall, we've got Scotland. I suppose they could do, I'm sure, in Cardiff. I know there's a judo program running in Belfast for some of the Irish boys, but there's not that many opportunities. There's not a lot of choice. So, you know, it's more about a bit of luck, you know, making sure we've got coaches there for them to continue. And not just club coaches, you know, people that can continue their direction, you know, and continue their pathway, taking them to different kinds of tournaments and things that challenge them, you know, not the same old circuit along the way. If you continue to do the same old things, you get the same result, you know. And when you evolve through generations of athletes, you've got to keep evolving with the sport and keep looking forward with the sport, which I think is really important. So that's one of the issues that we've got. The club, we've been here since 1958. We ain't going anywhere. You know, obviously we're innovative about what we do and where we change things. You know, coaches are getting older. Some of the young coaches that I've got potentially involved in the program is great. You know, and we're really looking forward to things progressing over the next year or so. But I've got to be innovative about the goal sets, because I'm not going to be able to take athletes into Europe, I don't think, you know.
You mentioned the DICE program a couple of times. What is that? So that's something new that started since I left the UK.
It used to be called the ACE, Dave. I don't know if you remember the ACE program. The ACE program was an apprenticeship in sporting excellence, and DICE is a diploma in sporting excellence. It's a generic program that runs for 16 and 17-year-olds at the moment. We run it on a camp basis, so they come for weekends or throughout the academic year, which is September to August. In Kendal, Danny Harper runs it, which is great because Danny's his skill set, PE teacher, judoka, great coach, really enthusiastic, regional coach. So it's actually starting to fit there on the pathway, on the England pathway, where athletes want to do that. It carries 64 UCAS points. It keeps athletes involved in the sport because of the UCAS points and the program itself, the academic program itself. It's been a bit academic this last year because obviously we haven't been able to get the face-to-face contact. You know, we will start to kick it off in September, and we're really excited about the program going forward. We try to take them and be a little bit more innovative than the normal programs. Camberley run it as well. So Camberley run it, Bath University run it, Walsall runs it, we run it. I think it's Redbridge now. It's Bill Taylor that runs it. I think that's everybody. I haven't missed anybody out. So it's an opportunity for 40 athletes a year to get involved in it. Usually they've been involved in the regional England program and the Cadets program, the England Cadets program. It's an England-based program. And they can go away with something academic before they go to university that's looked on as enhancement, you know, and UCAS points. So it's a great thing for the kids to actually do and drive on, and judo being involved in academia as well, which is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's something I definitely would have done if it had been around when I was 16.
Yeah. And hopefully we change behaviours. You know what I mean? We make them better. So the difference at Kendal is that, you know, we talk about nutrition and we actually take them in the kitchen and cook, you know, and, you know, how much you learned, Dave, when you were training full time about nutrition and how you cook yourself and what you want to get a love for food, you know what I mean, in the right kind of ways, and trying to get the right relationships with grub and stuff. And I know how big you and Michael used to be into your coffee. What did you used to make with all the nuts? I've lost it now.
Oh,
all
the
nuts,
muesli bars.
The muesli bars, making your muesli bar. They were really entertaining with 10 ton of treacle and all sorts of stuff and syrup and all that kind of stuff. And then Gav got you involved in the coffee, I think, didn't he?
Yeah,
you and
Gav was the coffee influence.
the coffee influence and the other stuff, you know. And I don't think drinking the volumes that you were drinking was always great, but you know, it's like me and a cup of tea. But you know, it was great. And by doing them kind of things and eating together and living together, you evolve things. So it's given them a little bit of a feel of that. Obviously, it's not the real deal, but it's giving them a feel of that. So they know what the expectation is if they do get involved as a full-time athlete, you know, or if they get involved as a coach, you know, they have them experiences. Because at the end of it, you know, my favorite comment to the home is you only know what you know, so, you know, you only know what you know, you can only pass on what you know, what knowledge you know. So, you know, if you read that or you get that academically and the other stuff, that's great. But if you actually experience it and you're actually involved in it and, you know, you talk to people, you evolve from people, it constantly changing all the time. So I'm really big at talking with people, you know, sitting down on a plane, talking to the person next door to you. And if you actually listen, I know I've been talking a lot today, but if you actually listen, sometimes you learn something, you know. It's great.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really nice place to end the conversation, Mike, on that note, because I've been sat here listening to you and I've known you for sort of 20 odd years now. Been a big influence on me as an athlete and as a coach. So I really appreciate you giving me your time to, you know, share your experiences.
Yeah, no, it's been great, Dave. So really enjoyed it. Look after yourself and we'll talk soon, no doubt. It's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.